Why did the 1981 hunger strike occur? What was Bobby Sands like? And what do you think over 100,000 people turned out for his funeral?
Well, the first thing to say about Bobby Sands is that every single person in this room could be and could have been a Bobby Sands. I mean, Bobby Sands was a very, very ordinary guy. He's a few years younger than me. I'm 61. He would have been about 57 if he had survived all of that. I'll just deal with this in a wee bit of length if I can. When I was first interned, the internees obviously had status because they were political detainees. But the sentenced prisoners, those who had been sentenced in no jury courts, also had political status, which had been won in 1972 on the back of a hunger strike. And in March 1976, the British government embarked upon, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier on about putting generals in charge. They embarked upon a process of criminalisation, Ulsterisation, and the primacy of the police. So what they wanted to do, and they were joined in this by the Irish government, what they wanted to do was to present the Republican struggle as a criminal conspiracy. There was no justice, no justness in it. There was no cause being served. It was about criminality, acts of Chicagoism, godfathers, people growing rich of crime. They had a difficulty in that there was a huge amount of political prisoners. So they decided that from March the 1st, 1976, that they would cease political status, and that everybody from that point would be a criminal. And one guy was arrested, and he was one of the people who was first subjected to this new policy, a guy called Kieran Nugent. And they gave him a prison uniform, and he said, "You'll have to nail that to my back if you want me to wear that." And that's not a new thing in Irish history either. That goes back, or indeed in any of these similar situations. Ulsterisation was where they wanted to withdraw mainstream British troops and to recruit indigenous. It's based upon Vietnamisation of the war in Vietnam. Exactly the same strategy was used to try and withdraw mainstream American troops and to use indigenous troops. And all of that brought in a lot of other policies, like shoot to kill, counter gangs, the growth in unionist paramilitaries, collusion, famous cases like Pat Finucane, who some of you may be familiar with, and many, many others. And the primacy of the police was, of course, to try and deal with this all as a criminal conspiracy. So they also had what was termed a conveyor belt, because the justice system was changed completely. Confessions which were forced or which were a result of beatings could be accepted as evidence. The word of a policeman a police officer was taken over a defendant. There were no juries, and there were other special laws brought in. So quite quickly, there were as many as 600 men in the new blocks, the new Hates blocks which had been built at Longcash. I was in the cages of Longcash at the time when they were building the Hates blocks. There were a small number of women in Armagh Women's Prison. And from Kieran Nugent's first refusal to wear the uniform, there was a lengthy protest. And the prisoners were held naked. They had only a prison blanket. They had no reading material. They had no radios. They had no sort of stimulation, mental or intellectual stimulation provided. And they increasingly fell back in their own endeavours. After particularly bad beatings, they were refused the right to, in prison you slop out, you have a toilet pole, you do your business in the toilet bowl, and every day you're allowed to go out and empty it and get showered and so on. They refused to let them slop out. And they then emptied some of the urine and so on onto the cell door. So that went on for some time. Cardinal O'Fee, who visited the prison during this, described the H blocks as being worse than the sewers of Calcutta at the time. Now, I know I'm speaking a bit long here, but it still strikes me as absolutely amazing that if you drive up the motorway, the M1 motorway to Belfast from Uri, in a modern consumer society on a nice bright day, and 200 yards or 300 or 600 yards off the road on the left-hand side, there are these 600 men being held in these conditions. Just absolutely amazing to me that this was, this wasn't a gulag. This wasn't, we're told, some strange dictatorial state. This was the mother of democracies. Now, Bobby had been imprisoned in cage 11, which was one of the cages that I was in. I got to know him reasonably well. He was an avid Gaeilgeoir. He learned his Irish in prison. He was a good singer. He taught himself the guitar. He played soccer. He played Gaelic football. And all in all, he was just a decent young fella who got caught up in all that was going on. When he was released from prison, on his subsequent rearrest, he was then moved into the H blocks. And in Christmas of 1980, there was a hunger strike. And the hunger strike was actually organized by some of the older prisoners who felt that they had to do something to break this cycle. And that hunger strike ended up in a standoff. One of the prisoners was near death, and there was an offer came from the British. The prisoners, without seeing sight of it, accepted that the hunger strike should end, and the British, I think within the system, maybe not at the senior level, but certainly within the system, resided from the measures which were involved in that. And Bobby was livid at that. And we spent some time persuading him not to go on hunger strike, and he tried to embrace other ways of sorting out all of these matters. And he commenced his hunger strike on the 1st of March, 1981. And if I can just to finish on this, has anybody here been in prison? Has anybody here should have been in prison? Okay. Well, think of your bathroom at home. A H block cell isn't much bigger than a bathroom. And two people, in most cases, lived in one of those cells. There was no furniture. The light was on all the time. There was maybe a mattress. By a mattress, I mean a sponge pad, the size of a single mattress, and a grey prison blanket and shinny. The prisoners were subjected to, there's a film which I have but have never had the courage to watch, called Hunger. And one of the guys, very good friend of mine who was through all of this, when he was discussing this film, said there was an act of brutality conducted in the H blocks every single day. An act of gross brutality. So it's little wonder in those circumstances that people, having tried all the various ways of drawing attention to their plight, would embark upon a hunger strike. And again, just to re-stress, it's absolutely and totally remarkable that 10 men died in the north of Ireland in the summer of 1981 by fasting to death.